What if I told you that the most iconic ship in movie history was built out of tank parts? Yeah, okay, not real tank parts, but you can spot World War II tank bits, like pieces of Panther tank, all over the engine deck.
What a piece of junk!
She'll make 0.5 past light speed.
Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into Kitbashing, the behind the scenes magic that helped bring the original Star Wars trilogy to life. Before CGI dominated Hollywood, visual effects artists depended on miniatures and kitbashing, a process where parts from commercial kits like planes, ships, tanks and cars were repurposed and assembled into completely new creations. And nobody mastered this technique better like the artist at Industrial Light and Magic in the late 1970s. For Star Wars, George Lucas wanted a used universe, a world that felt old, worn and lived in, just like your mom. At the time, most science fiction most of the science fiction films looked clean, bright and sterile. Lucas wanted the opposite, and out of that vision came one of the most iconic ships ever designed. And if you look closely at the surface of the Millennium Falcon, you see hundreds and sometimes thousands of tiny mechanical looking details. From a distance they look like vents, pipes and engine components. But in reality, many of these shapes came straight from model kits. The original Falcon model used pieces from over 150 different kits, including race cars and a lot of World War II tanks and aircraft parts. And yes, this is really where the fun begins. The Falcon is absolutely packed with Panther tank parts. I originally wanted to use the Bandai Falcon kit for this video, but some holiday shipping delays ruined that plan. Still, I have a few other kits to go through, and of course we can rely on the archive photos and this classic toy. Some of you watching probably had this toy as a kid. Even though Kenner didn't try to match the movie model accurately, you can still see the shapes that resemble the Panther engine deck, at least in a loose and simplified way. Looking at the archive photos, you can clearly see the Panther hulls placed on the Falcon, especially under the engine exhaust ports. Another recognizable part includes center tank mud flaps, a section of a Leopard engine deck, gun mount arms for a Hummel, a wheel mount for a Kettenkrad, and on the right side of the engine deck you can spot the upper half of a Jagdpanther. You can also see several gun mantlets from a Panther G on the front, left and right, plus multiple Tiger I mantlets inside some of the engine pits. What's cool is that you can still see the alignment peg used to position the gun barrel during model building. There are Panther track links along the walkway leading to the docking rings, which themselves feature additional tank parts including track links and pieces from a Leopard. But the thing that jumps out to me the most is the STKFC 251 front armor plates used on the front section. But let me know what you can spot on the Falcon in the comments, because honestly you could make an entire video just cataloging every single kitbashing detail. Next up is the X-Wing, one of the most iconic starfighters in movie history. The original prototype was designed by Colin Campbell, who used a 1/16 scale Revell Dragster model kit as the base for his concept. The design changed over time and eventually turning into the X-Wing we know today. The final filming models were built using lots of Japanese ships and aircraft kits. But there are some tank parts in there too. For example, you can spot a Panther engine deck piece, a large section from a M4A3 Sherman including the lower part of the turret, and if we grab the toy you can even see the Sherman details on the 1997 X-Wing. The older vintage version uses a sticker that actually outlines the hull, hatches and turret shape of a Sherman tank. There's also a Panther mud flap, and the X-Wing's exhausts came from a F4 Phantom. Above that you can clearly see a World War II German tank jack. On some production models it's fully present, while on others it's cut down depending on the scale of the prop. The Bandai kit I have includes the full set of these details, even though the mud flap is removed. And of course the X-Wing's counterpart is the TIE Fighter. Its iconic sound was inspired by Stuka dive bombers, but sadly World War II plane parts or any other kit parts are surprisingly minimal. I've been examining it for a while now. So far I only identified a Sherman bogie on the upper rear section, some Hatcher track links on the top of the cockpit dome, and disappointingly enough, that's pretty much it. The AT-AT or AT-AT walkers from The Empire Strikes Back were also incredible examples of kitbashing. Their heads, armored plates and mechanical details include pieces from tanks, armored cars, battleships and aircraft kits. For example, the AT-AT double chin laser cannons are actually modified Stuk 3 gun barrels, and on the back you can clearly see two flak-feeling armored shields. The Stuk guns were altered a bit for the film, but the flak gun shields were just stuck on there completely unmodified. But what else can we find? Now let's take a look at this big vintage toy and compare it to the Bandai kit. On the vintage toy there aren't many recognizable parts on the body. The chin cannons still resemble their original Stuk shape, and on the back you can still pinpoint pieces taken from iconic German vehicles, but I'll come back to that later. The main body of the AT-AT seems to have been built mostly from scratch, without many obvious kit parts. One thing that stands out is what appears to be an exhaust port of a T-34 tank. The head, however, is where things get interesting. Here we can spot smaller hull and turret pieces like a Sherman viewport. The two side laser cannons seem to be made from parts of the Tamiya flak feeling set. And you will find more of that flak set on the back and in the form of two armored shields. There's also a piece that looks like a T-34 hatch, or possibly the top section of the entire turret. One of the most noticeable components is almost the entire top half of an ST-KFC 2223 armored car hull. Beneath that seems to be a tank bogie though, and I'm still trying to identify which vehicle it came from. If you know, drop it in the comments below. Now, looking back at the vintage scanner toy, you can see the same ST-KFC inspired body shape, but the toy only includes a single flak feeling armored shield, which is a fun detailed difference. And now to one of my favorites, the AT-ST. It made its first appearance in a short scene in The Empire Strikes Back, but got its big moment in Return of the Jedi. Just like the AT-AT, it used pieces from 1/35 scale Tamiya tanks, German flak gun kits and even race car model kits. The most obvious part staring you right in the face is the driver's viewport, which comes from a M3 Lee tank. You can also spot hatches from a German ST-KFC 232 Achterrad armored car, and on top of the AT-ST turret you will find the engine deck of a Matilda tank. And the handrails below it are actually the antenna rails from a ST-KFC 223. The main turret hatch itself seemed to have been scratch built from car parts alone. Which is odd when you have so many tank parts all around this thing, and the most tanky thing on the AT-ST you built from car parts. However, there's a big difference between the AT-ST in Empire and the one in Jedi. They're essentially two completely different vehicles. The general shape is the same, but it was changed heavily. That's why looking at the Bandai kit doesn't help much. It's modeled after the Return of the Jedi version. The M3 viewport and the flak feeling shields are still there, but many of the Empire parts are missing. If we examine the original Empire AT-ST model, the mortar launcher seems to be built from various German flak kits. And after doing some digging, parts of a Nebelwerfer kit were used as well. You can also find the towing legs from the kit on the Walker legs itself. The back of the turret is packed with tank parts, though many are chopped up pieces from different models. The only clear recognizable part is the engine deck vent or the titty vents from the KV-1. These details are omitted from both the Bandai kit and the vintage toy, though the vintage toy does include the flak shields. The stop-motion ATST models seen on screen were scratch-built in multiple sizes, based loosely on the Empire design. By that point the ILM team had stepped away from heavy kitbashing. The tank parts are still present in spirit, but heavily altered and sometimes nearly unrecognizable. Seeing the models side by side really highlights how different they are. But that's pretty much it. I've also looked into other Star Wars vehicles like the Snowspeeders, but most of them were almost entirely scratch built with very few kit based parts. Star Destroyers on the other hand are absolutely packed with tank pieces. Maybe I'll take a closer look at them in a future video. If you enjoyed this deep dive into practical effects, hit like, subscribe and let me know in the comments which Star Wars ship is your favorite. Thanks for watching and may the Force be with you. See you in the next one.
Heavy base of action.